Imagine you're 14 years old in the prime of your life, high school, fitting in, starting to date, developing a social life, and starting to understand exactly who you are. Then in an instant, it's all taken away. One decision that changes the trajectory of your life forever. Sabrina, tell us the last time you walked and what exactly you felt in that moment.
So I remember it being a beautiful Saturday afternoon. I was 14, and my best friend and I were spending the day together in my house. And it was just such an amazing day. We were dancing and laughing and just having a great afternoon. And, we were in 10th grade and we were very excited, I remember, about going out that night. It was Halloween. And we felt included and had a lot of friends, and we just wanted to go out and have a great time. And so the whole day, like I said, was just jumping around, goofing off. And when it came to the evening time when we were supposed to go out, I remember my nervous system kind of like taking over my body, because I knew that the only way we would go to this party is if I had lied to my parents about where I was going, because never in a million years would they let me go out with a bunch of friends from high school to go to a party. So I remember telling my parents that I was going out to the movies with a friend, Rachel. And instead, my friend Karen and I, we got out of the house. We were standing outside. It was about 9:30 p.m. Of course, I was still on my feet. We were all dressed up. We were excited. And within minutes, we got picked up by some kids from high school that we barely knew. And I jumped in the car. We were 6 kids in one car, and that was it. The second I got in the car and sat down, I never got back on my feet again.
Wow. So you consciously made a decision at that point to lie to your parents, correct?
Yeah, I would say that at 14, it seems like it was a conscious decision. I think at the time it was probably more subconscious, because I think kids at that age, we naturally lie to manipulate and to get our way.
Sure.
And I always say, I wasn't a bad kid, but I was curious and adventurous, and I just wanted to go out and have fun.
Right.
I wasn't looking to do anything outrageous, but I knew, coming from a more conservative home, that if I told them the truth, I wouldn't get out the door. So I think it was a mix, but probably more subconscious at the time.
Right. And exactly how, what emotions did you go through, or do you remember being in the hospital? When did it finally set in that essentially you weren't going to be able to walk again for the rest of your life? Did that set in right away, or did it take you some time to understand that this was going to change not only your life, but the life of your parents and your brother as well?
Well, I think just to give you a little background, when we left my home that night, there's no comprehension of how your life can change so instantly. We were 6 kids in a car going to this party. Within minutes, we split up into two different cars. I stayed in the backseat of a BMW, and no seatbelt. Nobody was wearing their seatbelt. And within minutes, the 2 drivers started drag racing over 90 miles per hour in a 30 mile per hour zone down a pretty dangerous street in Miami Beach. And within seconds, the other car lost control and hit the car that I was in. And we slammed into a parked car and then head on to a tree. And in that moment, which I don't recall, my mind just blocked out the whole incident. I literally went flying into the backseat of the driver's side. And in an instant, I became paralyzed from the neck down. And unlike in the movies where the doctor comes to you in the hospital and says, you broke your neck, you're never going to walk again, that never happened to me. So I was in intensive care for about a month, and I had no understanding of what a spinal cord injury was. I knew I couldn't move, but I didn't understand why. And I thought it was temporary. And the only time I kind of got a glimpse into what had happened was about a month and a half after my injury in rehabilitation. my therapist put me in a wheelchair for the first time and rolled me into the cafeteria. And when I went into the room, I saw other people in wheelchairs. And in that moment, like my heart just collapsed and I realized that they were a reflection of who I was. But again, incomprehensible at such a young age and so in such an acute moment of the injury to understand and grasp the magnitude of the permanency of a spinal cord injury.
Right. Well, being that young, it's hard to understand exactly what's going on, and so many emotions from that, and then that establishes so much trauma and PTSD that then we'll be getting into a lot with our discussions, with understanding how you coped with the trauma and PTSD from that. But what I'd like to ask is, how did your family react at that moment? Because individually, both your father, mother, and also your brother at that point too, their lives now change, right? And it becomes a whole family situation where each person individually has to be dealing with their own emotions. So how is that?
What I remember very vividly is just being overwhelmed with lots of love and lots of support. My parents never left my side. My brother, my family flew in from all over the world, all over the country. Friends from high school nonstop, teachers, community leaders. I was just inundated with support and a lot of love because in the early stages of my injury, we didn't even know if I was going to make it out alive. There was a chance that I would not make it through the surgery. And so I think everybody was on pins and needles. And to be honest, I was just in the twilight zone, just surviving, fighting for my life at the time.
So now what happens exactly? I mean, I know from what you've shared with me personally, you went into the hospital at 14 years old. Your birthday was shortly thereafter. So you're coming out at 15. What does life look like at that point? Going back to your house, do you have any mobility at all? Explain a little bit to.
So my injury was so high. I had a cervical injury, C3, 4, and 5 were all injured. I had zero mobility from the neck down. I think about 2 months into rehabilitation, I was able to start shrugging my shoulders and showing a little bit of signs of mobility. It typically takes about 1 to 2 years for the swelling around the spinal cord to diminish or to decompress. So that way the flow from the brain through the spine to your limbs, if there's function that's going to return, it comes back. So for me, it took quite a few months. But
so you had no arm mobility at that point?
Nothing at that point. I was sitting in a different wheelchair with like what people think looks like a straw where you blow into it. And
so
I didn't have...
That's how the wheelchair was controlled by...
Through breath.
Through breath.
Controlled through breath. And that's designed for very high cervical injuries when you have no mobility. And again, there's a limited amount of time that you can stay in a hospital. I did 2 months of rehabilitation and then it was literally time to go. And I was learning how to eat again with a sling in my arm with special adaptive devices to feed myself and put my makeup on. But at the time, it was still all very difficult.
So what type of devices? You're not able to use your arms at this point. So what
I'm not, but they had me in like a sling, right? So if you can shrug your shoulder, you could kind of it was comical to some extent because I'd spend like an hour just trying to eat a yogurt with a special fork that's clipped to my hand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Comical. I mean, it wasn't funny at the time, but it was like a joke that I go to therapy.
It looks weird to the looking in, or
no,
what's funny about it? I don't see.
It's just that a normal person could take 5 minutes to eat a yogurt. It would take me about an hour. So it's like relearning how to do the most simplest of things in that environment.
Right.
And so, but then I was discharged
Do you feel helpless at all? Is there any sense of helplessness or? Did you just have so much support from your parents that?
No, there's a sense of, I think for me, it was more a sense of confusion. I didn't really understand.
Mm-hmm.
I was too young. I didn't understand the magnitude of what had just happened. What I do remember, very strong emotion, however, is when I was discharged and I went home, my bedroom was upstairs on the second floor. So I literally moved into my living room, and a hospital bed was brought into my home. My parents had built a ramp for me outside the house because there were steps to get in. So they quickly modified our property to the best of our ability. But for a year, I didn't even have a fully accessible shower to take a shower in. And, I'm a kid and it's normal to wake up and shower every day. But with this type of life-altering change, I had to make the best of it, getting bathed in bed, washing my hair in the sink. It was just awful. But, I learned how to adapt to that while we were building a bedroom for me in the back of the house on the same floor. But I think the deepest emotion was literally like within a week of going home, my social worker and my mom were like, "You're going back to school." And I was floored by the idea. That was incomprehensible. Like, how can I go back to school the way I am?
Right.
That was really difficult for me.
So did that create any darkness or anything within that you were afraid of facing? Was there fear? Or was there doubt? What emotions are you going through?
For me, the biggest emotion that I ever felt, it wasn't fear, it was shame. I felt so embarrassed to be in a wheelchair. And when I visited the school a couple times, the school system had a nurse for me that would come every day to meet me and take care of me throughout the day because I couldn't do much on my own at the time.
And at the time when you go home, after you have that nurse at school, when you go home, it's your family's taking care of you.
And I had help at home as well.
Okay.
Yeah. But in school, I had a full-time nurse. She was an older woman. So it was just an awkward situation for me. And I lost my voice. I didn't know how to speak up for myself. And I remember probably the darkest period in the early years of my injury was the shame of being in school with a nurse. And then for probably about 3 years, most people don't know this, but during lunch break, I spent it hiding in the bathroom with my nurse because I wasn't able to feed myself. And I was so ashamed of having to be fed. So I hid from the world for 3 years. Every Monday through Friday, I was in the bathroom. She was feeding me. And of course, she had to help me with the restroom. But I was inundated with shame.
And that was all created from yourself. You created that shame because nobody, or may I ask, nobody was making you feel uncomfortable at school. Nobody was treating you.
No, everybody treated me so well. The teachers, the principal, they did everything to accommodate me as a returning student now in a wheelchair, which they were not even, prepared for because it's such an unusual circumstance. But
right. I couldn't. In my high school, we didn't have anybody in a wheelchair, and I could only imagine being a child and having to understand what your fellow classmate is going through and also knowing how to treat them, right? Because one thing that I'm learning being together is that you still enjoy your independence, right? You enjoy having to do for yourself, which you do a lot more for yourself sometimes than I could do for myself. And I guess you really gain that as a child. But my question would be not how children treated you, but how other kids treated you, but how did they feel? How do you think their emotions were? Yeah. How did they cope with this? Primarily the kids in the car, right? Like they experienced this with you. No, everybody else walked away with no scratch, probably, right? I think from what you've told me.
So I think it was a shock to the whole system because we were 6 students from that high school. As I mentioned before, I didn't know the driver and I barely knew the 2 other guys. We were 6 kids total, 3 girls and 3 guys. I just remember in the hospital, everybody was very, very upset with the guys for taking our lives into their hands and for drag racing. So there was a lot of animosity. There was a lot of hate towards them. I remember passing them in school and I was the one that felt the shame. Like they'd come walk by me and I'd put my head down, but there was zero conversation with them. Mm-hmm. And my best friend—
So as if you were at fault.
I don't know if I took the blame or I just know I felt the shame at the time. I didn't have the confidence to just to be strong and understand the situation. So instead, I hid in the bathroom. I kept my head down. My voice was very low. And I don't mean vocally on a sound system. I mean, I didn't know how to express myself. And my friends around me, there was a lot of love, but again, everybody at that age, we were starting to go out and date and go to parties and just, step into who we were as teenagers. And my life had just turned into therapy and doing my homework to make sure that I graduated school on time. So there were a lot of emotions. And I do recall with all the love and support from my peers that some of them, it was very difficult for them to see what happened to me because we were all so young. It was very hard to understand.
Mm-hmm. At which point do you start acclimating yourself back into being a teenager or being a young adult? What was it not until you went then to college?
I remember 2 specific turning points for me. One was when my principal asked me if I would speak to the seniors about reckless driving to help send a message to other students about thinking about the decisions and the choices they make. And in the moment, it was hard for me to accept that this was my purpose in life. I didn't want to, but I said yes to it. And then I said yes to another talk. And I just remember feeling a sense of being able to share my story to help others. And that felt very gratifying. And I think that started to instill in me a level of a sense of purpose and security. And then the second very big turning point for me was on graduation day from high school. I was on stage with a class of 600 students, and they gave me the first diploma, and they put me right in the front of the stage. And for the next 3 hours, every student literally had to walk over my feet and my wheelchair to get their diploma. And I just said to myself in that moment that had I given up, everybody else on this stage would still be here graduating. And I realized that life goes on with or without you. And what a great decision I made, of course, with the support of my mom and my family to go back to school, but it was on me to continue my life. And then I chose to move into the dorms at UM, and I felt like it was a clean slate. Everybody in college would only know me as Sabrina in the wheelchair, as opposed to starting high school on my feet, active and athlete, and winding up in a chair. And that was really a turning point where I started to lift my head up and feel like I was worth something in society.
Right. And not only being worth something now, in many ways, you're the center of attention, right? Based on first the chair, and then comes your personality, and you're full of life, you're full of light, you're full of love. So once somebody gets to know you, then it brings even more attention to who you are as a person, which I'm now lucky to enjoy. But how do you deal with that? When you walk in a room at that point in college, right? When you're walking into a classroom, essentially all eyes are on you.
Right, because I can't really sneak in.
Right. And yeah,
I think that just took time in the early years. Again, there was a lot of shame around it. And it wasn't just in school. It was going into a restaurant. It was crossing the street. I felt like everybody, the whole world was looking at me. And eventually, as I gained my sense of clarity, purpose, and confidence, I realized that the chair is a very powerful tool to help inspire and teach people. And so I with time, I learned to utilize the wheelchair as a positive force in the world to help make change.
Right.
And then all eyes on me. I don't think I ever minded at that point.
Well, I'm certainly enjoying it now. But no, in seriousness, I think it's amazing, right? Because it gives us an opportunity to have that opening or a connection with somebody where we could share ourselves with them. So, I know I like to joke around a lot, but really I embrace it, right? Because it gives us an opportunity now as a couple to really touch people and to help people. And so I enjoy being the center of attention, but no, really in a good way, and to spread positivity, to spread light, and spread our happiness, because
and I think what you learn is
happy.
like the one thing that I share with kids over the past 3 decades since I've been talking on stages and as an advocate is that like when you learn to understand what makes you different and then use that difference to have a positive impact on your community and the world, then you're unstoppable. And then if people are looking at you like, who cares? It's okay. Like, look at me.
Right.
I have something different to say.
Wow.
And so you learn how to embrace that as opposed to run and hide from it, which is what I did early on.
And similar, and essentially what you're teaching me now, right? To embrace the struggles that I've been through, and to be able to help people that maybe have similar struggles or similar issues with addiction, stuff like that.
Correct. Because the emotions of hiding, lying, shame, guilt, insecurity, like whether it's an addiction or it's a wheelchair or it's a diagnosis or whatever it might be, as human beings, we collectively all experience those emotions. And so by sharing, it's a relatable story, even though the statistics of people sitting in chairs are much smaller than population walking. I think a walking population can resonate with a lot of the emotions that I felt. And that's why it's so important for us individually and as a couple to also share what we've been through, because people are inspired and they might have blind spots that they otherwise wouldn't even recognize until they hear something that somebody has to say or to share.
So just with closing out, this is the beginning part of your story and what changed your life at that point at 14, and you've taken us to kind of starting your transition into college. So one thing that I just like to understand, because it's actually something that you mentioned to me in the past few weeks, was that from the time you got injured, you've always slept with somebody in your home or in your dorm, right? You an assistant, right? So an aide. So you haven't slept by yourself since you left for college. Just share a little bit about that. And
so I think most people, so I'm a very independent person, and a lot of people see me like actively either on my own or with friends or with you or with family members. But as a quadriplegic, which is when all 4 extremities are affected, particularly in your hands and your legs, you're limited with how much you can do for yourself. So for 33 years, legitimately, I've had 24-hour care behind the scenes. Somebody who has to help me in the morning, get in and out of bed, get showered, get dressed, help me with the bathroom. Like there's a whole system to keep a quadriplegic alive. And
there's people that want to understand that system.
And I think a lot of people
I keep
don't.
telling you this.
I think a lot of people don't understand because they don't understand the magnitude of what it means to be paralyzed. And how many times do we go out and people want to like shake my hand, but my fingers don't move, so I can't. It's like these awkward moments. But it is important for the world to understand that like there are jobs out there, like being a full-time aide or an assistant, that help people like me live an independent life. And so I have not slept alone because if I need help in the middle of the night, I need somebody that I could depend on to help me. And those are the reasons why.
Okay, well, I mean, you've made it look so easy. So you take it with ease because it looks like behind the scenes, there's not much going on. Just from the minute I met you, I didn't think about all the things that you have to do to get ready and to start your day. And it wasn't until I started to get closer to you that I've started to understand that process and gotten involved with a little bit of that process, which I make fun, and we get a lot of laughing out of it. But so I think this was a great start to us introducing you to the world. And I think it gives people a general understanding of who you started off as once this accident happened to you at 14 years old. So I'm excited for us, both individually and together as a couple, to continuing to share our story. Please subscribe to us. Please enjoy our talks. We're going to be touching a lot on spiritual practices, how we've coped with healing, among many other things. So we look forward to this, and I'm just happy that we finally started this process.
And I want to just close by obviously saying thank you and blessed to have you in my life with an open mind to be in a partnership with me. I think that's important for the world to know. And of course, we're going to be talking a lot about that as we get deeper into our conversations. But just going back to what you said, how I make things look easy, I just wake up every morning in a space of gratitude. And I know that despite the physical limitations that I've had to endure in my life, that God blessed me with a very healthy and happy mindset. And it's been a practice every day. And I could have fell to the darkness, but it's a choice that we all get to make in life. If we want to go through life happy and make the best of everything, or we want to sit back and be miserable, which I could have done as well. So that to me is also a very important ingredient in my success that I love to share with people, because at the end of the day, we get to decide how we want to live our lives.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And we'll see you guys soon.